We have background properties, border properties, and border images. So background color. You guys know your colors. There's nothing new to see here. If you don't know your colors, see section 6. Old school background images. We said background image, and we would give a path. And we actually use the shorthand background a lot, which stood for background color, background image, background repeat, background attachment, and background position. After today, you will no longer be using the background shorthand, because I said so. And that's not because Microsoft. So new in CSS3 is multiple background images. It's supported even in IE9. So it doesn't work in IE7 or IE8, but in IE7 and IE8, you declare one background image. And then right after that, you declare background image again, and you list all of your images. If CSS doesn't understand a line, it ignores it. So it's not like it's going to overwrite it and not know what you're talking about. It's just going to say, I confused because Microsoft. So here we have two images. We have a blue box and a brown box, and it says blue GIF and brown GIF. Notice that blue GIF is underneath brown GIF. It paints from the end from the last one to the first one. It will always do that. When we were talking about shadows, it was the same thing. So notice that they're comma separated, layered from front to back, or painted back to front, whichever one you want to think about it. If you are including background images, you generally want to include a background color. Obviously, if you have transparency, you won't be able to do that, but you need to think that your background color should be enough of a contrast with your text color. Otherwise, your users will not be able to see your text if the image fails. So that's an important thing to note. Background images are not printable. They won't print. And they're not accessible. So if you have content in them, your screen reader is not going to read them. We have tons of background image values. Before, we were limited to this, right? A single image, whether it was a PNG, a JPEG, or a GIF. And as they say in Hebrew, zeot. I don't know why I just remembered that word from Hebrew that I learned many years ago. But zeot, that's it. Or none. Now we have many features we can use. We can use background gradients. We have linear and radial. We can also use data URIs. And I'll cover those in a minute. And then coming in the future, but not yet here, is you can actually paint an element to the page, such as a canvas, and use that as a background image. Not yet supported very well. And then you can also tell it, not yet supported, but future, say include a sprite and just show this section of it. That will be coming. So URL values, what can you put in URL? PNGs, GIFs, JPEGs. You can now put SVGs also. So you can have an SVG image file, which is just a few lines of text, basically. Not well supported, so don't use it, but hopefully coming. And then data URIs. Have you guys heard of a data URI? The gibberish that gets passed, like this, except for it's like 20 lines long or even more. This is good for reducing number of HTTP requests. It's good for very small images, not for big images. Good example of using it is on a mobile phone if you have a Twitter application. Why would you want to use it? Because you have different people's faces. They're this big. You don't want to be making 24 different HTTP requests, but you have no clue. Twitter has no clue who your friends are. So they pass it as data URIs, or at least they used to. And then data URI as an SVG file. I'm going to click on this just to prove. This is SVG. I have no clue. There we go. So to prove that it's SVG, if I get rid of this and I run it, it's still there. If I change this to some other color, who knows what that's going to be, and I run it, oh look, it changed colors. It's now, actually that's a really pretty color. I'm going to change this to CodePen.io next, because I think this should be in CodePen. So anyway, that's an SVG, and I'm using data URI. So here you see it says data image, UTF-8, and then this is an actual SVG file. Very short, much smaller than an HTTP request in terms of time. Wrong deck. Background supporters. Here we go. Okay. So this has a little asterisk. So this is probably not going to be the final syntax. It's probably going to be image and that. But this actually, so if you use this right now, the browsers that do support it, and I have no clue which ones do because I forgot to look that up, you say XY, which is the starting point at 40, and then you just show 20 pixels of 20 pixels. So the cool thing with this syntax is that the media fragment will not break the URL, right? But the hashtags will be ignored, so you'll be showing the whole image, which is not what you want to do. So that is why they are switching it to this image instead of URL, because this one will not break anything. You do background image, and then you put the sprite in, and then you do the background URL, you put the sprite in, then you do background image, and you do this, and the browsers that don't understand will ignore. So we're all good. This is actually supported since Firefox 4 with the different syntax. Because remember I said element here, and you could show some element. In IE4, in Firefox 4 and later, if you want to play with it, the correct syntax will be this in the end. But right now, Moz has it prefixed with Moz-element, and the ID of whatever element you want to use as a background image. So you can create a canvas, or you can just use your H1 and put it as a background, which would be really tacky, but doable. So also in the future, but not yet here, is you say background image, and then you say image, and then it'll try these images in order. So it'll try the SVG. If that fails, it'll try this one. If that fails, it'll try this one. And if not, you can just put a default color. And this is actually kind of cool, which is supposed to be coming too, which is background image. If the language is right to left, then use this image, which will be very nice if you have arrows and your text is going left to right, and you want to point to your text, but then it's changing languages, and you're like, whoa, it did it for me, yay, this is cool. Okay, that's what that does. So this is all stuff you don't need to know how to do. We're not covering the syntax because you're not going to do it. Just know that it exists, so when you need it, when it's actually supported, it's there. Cool, let's skip that. So this is what's supported. Basic support of images since Internet Explorer 4. Was anyone coding Internet Explorer 4? We have one person who is older than me in the room. Okay. Actually, I'm probably older than you, but we'll take it outside. Okay. Then multiple backgrounds since IE9. Since Safari 1.3, it's like, seriously, IE9, this is how long it took you? But we won't go there. And I put a yes here because I don't actually know when it started supporting it. Gradients 3.6 support with different syntax. And now the syntax has changed, but I'm going to cover all that later for gradients. SVG images, pretty cool. You can use them on all mobile devices. Since IE9, even the old Windows phone supports it, so that's cool. And element and image is only supported in Firefox the last time I checked. Old property, background repeat, no repeat. Who here uses a CSS reset? Okay, so I actually add this line into my CSS reset because I do not want my background images repeating 99.9% of the time. So I always stick in, when it says margin 0, padding 0, I put background repeat, no repeat in there. No reason not to. So what does this do? You can repeat. And this is why I put it, because even I know that's ugly. You can stripe it across the top with X. You can stripe it along the left with Y. And then we have two values that are not supported, which I'm going to go over anyway. So right now you see that there are 9.5 circles going across the top, right? And one gets cut off. And my designer is just very unhappy about this. So there's two things we'll be able to do. I can use either space or round in the future. So space, what space will do, it'll say, you know what, that one's not finished. I'm going to cut that one off. And I'm going to evenly space the 9 other ones. So I'm going to cut the 10th one off and equally space the other 9. So none of them will be broken, but there might be gaps between them. Or I can use round, which also will cut the last one off, and it will actually elongate the other ones and round them up so that it will fit. And so that's what space and round does. Completely irrelevant to this right now, especially since it's not even supported in Chrome. But when we get to border image, this will become relevant. So that's why I pointed it out now, because it's much easier to understand here than it is during border image. Background attachment. Everyone thinks they know what background attachment does, and they don't. Because when I do this, and the value is scroll, you guys are, wait, but that's not scrolling. Fixed, you're kind of like, where the heck is it, right? Because when you do fixed, the background image is actually fixed to the parent, not fixed to the current element. So this background image is on the div that I just moved, but it's fixed relative to the parent. So then local is actually what you want it to do, which moves it up and down, right? That's what you thought it would do. That's what most people think it does. When people put a background image in, they expect it to do that, right? Not surprising anyone there? It's because IE did not know how to handle it, and this is what IE actually did. And so that's why people think that this is normal. But that's actually the value of local. So fixed, local, and scroll, the default value is scroll. But you might actually want to be using local. And that's another reason why you don't want to use the background image shorthand, because you're overwriting that when you do it the way you want it. Okay, background position. This is one thing this is the first time I included in a deck, because I realized that no one knows this. So on this background image is positioned at 75% from the top and 75% from the left, right? Background position 75, 75. Does that make sense? So which part of this is 75% from the top and 75% from the left? Most people think that it's the top left corner that's positioned 75% from the top and 75% from the left. But actually, when you use percentages, it's the part that is that ratio in. Because if it was 100% by 100%, it would be down here. Because it would be this spot right here that's positioned in the bottom right corner. And so it's this spot right here, which is 75% inside my div, 75% from the top, 75% from the left, that is actually positioned 75% from the top and 75% from the left. Does that make sense to people? I'll show you, I'll change this around just to, so I put in 5% in, and you can't really tell because this is actually 2 pixels by 2 pixels, so it's taking up. But if I did 100%, right? And I'm going to move that little box in there too. Right? So this is centered right there on the box. But you see how the 100% mark of that box is at 100%. Oops. I have to do this. Okay. So that is 100% from the top and 50% from the left, and then 50-50. Right? That's positioning the center point in the center. Did you guys know this? Does that make it much clearer as to what's happening? So when you're using percentages, if you use top, left, center, right, you know that it's being just positioned there. But most people don't know that if you're actually positioning it by percentages, it's because if you're doing it by pixels, right, it's actually moving the top left corner 50 pixels, 50 pixels. But if you're using percentages, it's actually doing a ratio. Okay, so that's good. We understand that. We're all good. We're all happy. When did this happen? In the last update of Chrome, we got new support for something. seriously, last week this was up here. So we now have support in Chrome. I can update this slide. Yay! Is this Chrome Canary or just regular Chrome? Okay, this is Chrome Canary. So it's probably not in Chrome, but let's check Chrome. Do you guys know what Chrome Canary is? I see if some knows. So Chrome Canary is the alpha or the beta. It's basically what's coming in Chrome. And so here's how Chrome used to look like a few weeks ago. This is what it looks like today. And this is what it will look like in the next release. So this right here, if I do Chrome About, it is number 25. And if I do Chrome About, it'll be number 23 most probably. Yep, 23. So that's Chrome Canary. If you look down here, I have 3 versions of Firefox. I have current. I have no clue which one this is because it's no longer 3.6. And I have Aurora. Aurora is the same thing. It's the next build. Then I have WebKit. And then I have the nightly build. And then I have Opera. And then I have Opera Next. So I don't actually test in all of these browsers because I don't care that much about Opera. So I don't test it that often. But Opera is actually one of the most modern browsers. It's really awesome. So if you want to see what's coming down the pipe, Opera is a great place to look. They do everything first, but they don't do it always the prettiest. So their form elements, they had form elements down a long time ago, but they were ugly. And we'll show you later on when we, oh no, we're not going to cover that. Oh well, I won't show you, haha. Okay. Okay, so reason for that digression, background position. Right 50 pixels, bottom 50 pixels. It's positioning it from the bottom right corner because I'm using the key term right and bottom. This does work with just 3 values or just 2 values, but it's really confusing. So I always include all 4 values, but I don't actually use it very often because it's not supported yet in WebKit, but it is coming in the next release. Yay! Okay, so that's Estelle's excitement. So I need to update this to 25. Okay. And so now that it's supported, usually I go to Firefox, we can do 150 pixels from the right, 250 pixels, 350, 750. You get the idea, right? If I do left, there's no reason to include left because it's obviously from left, but it breaks it, so that's why I include. If I include either left, right, top, or bottom, include all 4 values. Does that make sense? And from the bottom, 350, and you'll just see it goes behind the thing, right? Yeah, okay. So that's the 4 value. Background clip is actually fairly important. It is where the background, what part of the background is showing. So by default, it is border box, and it shows through. But you can make it padding box, and so it only. And most people's elements don't have borders, so it doesn't really matter. And this is the border color. I mean the background color. It's not the image. The image, by definition, is I believe content box. No, it's a padding box by definition. So that's why it's up in the cutoff right there. But the background color is background clip, and you tell it where to clip the color. What part of the element that you have do you want to show the background through? The default value, again, border box, it shows all the way through, but you can say don't show the background color through everything. Only do it inside where the content is. So if you have padding, and you only, I never use content box. I usually use padding box, or I leave it default at border box. The next one is background origin, and that means where do you start the background image. So the background clip was the background color, and the background origin is the background image, which especially when you're using multiple background images, it might be very important where you actually have it. So here, border box, the image goes all the way to the border. Padding box, the image stays inside the padding. And content box, the content is right there. The image is inside the content. Does that make sense? And this is another reason why you don't want to use the background shorthand, because you don't know the syntax to including these, and if you change it to something and you use the background shorthand, you're overwriting it and making it the default again. Okay, background origin, background clip. Do you guys want to play with this? I should just move on. I'll move on. Okay, background size. Vitally important now that we have high DPI images, or high DPI devices. When you send an image and you want to be super high resolution to the iPhone 4, and it's a background image, you send an image that's 4 times the size. It's twice as tall and twice as wide. But an image is an image is an image. It's the same size that it's on your computer when you save it and upload it. So you're going to have an image that's this big that's you're sending, and you're going to have an image that's this big. But when your image is that big on your high DPI device, you want to fit it in the original space, right? So sometimes it just takes up the whole div, and that's fine. But other times, you want to tell it, I actually want it to fit in this part of the page. Because normally, we just say background auto. You make the background image the size that you want it. You know, like let's say you have a logo of a tree in the back of your page. And you just put it on the background. You say background image, tree, bottom left. And you have this little tree hanging down there. And then you send this high DPI tree, right? And then the tree's twice as big, or 4 times as big. And that's not what you wanted. So for that, we have background size. Default value is auto, and then we have 2 key terms of contain and cover, and I'll cover that on the next slide. And then you have length. So here, 30 pixels down to 7 pixels. You can just tell it exactly what size you want it to be. Then we also have contain and cover. So auto is the default. And you remember the shark? You guys have the shark here. It has, you know, waves. So we want to show the whole shark so we can contain it. And this will make sure that the picture actually fits into the box. But it doesn't fill up the whole box. So we can cover, which means make sure it covers the whole thing. Don't kill the aspect ratio. You know, keep it the original aspect ratio, but just make it big enough to fit the whole thing. So auto, do you see the bottom and the top are, have gray space right here? This is the default size, and you can see right there that there's space. Or you can actually tell it, I want it to fit that box, and you can. It will only destroy the resolution, the aspect ratio, if you tell it to. So auto, contain, and cover maintain the original aspect ratio, but I can tell it, I don't care about the aspect ratio, and you can do whatever you want. You see how the shark is much taller than it should be? Okay. So that's background size. So it's good for high DPI images. Contain grows or shrinks to fully fit, and cover grows to the minimum size required that 100% of it fits into the parent. Okay. So this is, again, because I've said it twice and you guys weren't listening to me, this is the background shorthand now, because we have new values, right? We have background image, background position, / background size, background repeat, background attachment, background origin, background clip. And then for multiple images, we go back and do that again. And then we add background color on the last one only, which comes out to look something like this. It's much easier to just say background repeat, no repeat, and then background image, comma, background image, comma, background image, and background size, background size, background size, for me. But also because you're overwriting the default values, and not, whereas more browsers support the individual properties than support this syntax. And you're not going to remember the syntax anyway. So just don't use the shorthand.